When it comes to marketing, numbers matter, y'all. It's not just, well, how's my funnel look and what is the content and who's my avatar and all those things. But I'm sure all of you at some point have to interact with a numbers person that says, well, how much is it going to cost? Can we afford this? So what I want, two main points with this is selling more at a loss just makes you broke faster.
Mm.
Because over 95% of the businesses that we work with, and we deal with we manage $500 million for our clients. 95% of the people, when they come to us, they do not understand their cost to fulfill and they are not charging enough.
Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of the Scalable Marketing Machine podcast. This is a special episode this week because I am taking you behind the scenes inside my Scalable Marketing Machine Accelerator program. This is a specialized accelerator, a program for B2B CEOs and their heads of marketing to help up-level their marketing programs and drive real ROI through their sales and marketing. So this week, our special guest is Pam Jordan, who is the founder at Pivot Business Group. She is a financial expert, a tax whiz. Her and her company just create magic for businesses in terms of how to save money and how to organize their back office, how to understand their client acquisition costs, how to increase their profits. She is a genius. She came into the accelerator program to give a mastermind all around profits and financials and how they really can affect every decision that we make in marketing. So if you've been scratching your head, not quite understanding how to be putting together your marketing budget, how much you really can be spending to acquire clients, really understanding that LTV and CAC ratio, which is such an important metric for founders as we grow and scale, then this episode is for you. So without further ado, Pam Jordan.
All right, perfect. Make sure that works. One thing that would be helpful, I know, Mike, you said you're multitasking, but just if I have a little context of who I'm speaking to, I can, that's helpful for me. So either if you want to just tell me or if you want to put it in the chat, that's brings value for everybody, just so I can speak specifically to what your situation is.
Of course, the marketing manager at PB Roofing. We're a commercial roofing organization, and so I handle all of the marketing aspects of what we do.
Yeah, so he's
Okay.
standing in for Wendy, who runs the sales and marketing that works directly with the CEO. And then Deborah, do you want to enter? Hey, Deborah, do you want to introduce your business?
Hello, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because I was trying to upload. So it's not on my camera. I will try to put my camera because I don't have my computer currently. My name is Deborah Wanza, and I'm the founder of Flux. So Flux is a search engine that only referentical company for daily purchases. And currently we are building a personal and assistant of shopping for help customer to find what they're looking for based on their budget, style, and ethic, and for company to help them to navigate and understand the user need. So a SaaS platform. And as you can hear with my accent, I'm from France, but I live in US since 4 years.
Okay. Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah, and then the other folks that are not on, we have manufacturing. So we've got a couple manufacturing clients, and again, like size varies, and of course, like team capabilities vary. We have also, let's see who else. Yep, Allison's here. Hey, Allison. We've got like more clinical clients as well.
Okay.
And so it ranges. A lot of folks, actually, by show of hands or in the chat, who has a acting CFO in the company? Not an accountant.
Yes, we have Eric. You met Eric, I think.
Yes. And so he's handling all of the finances, right?
Yes, it's a lot of work. Yes, he's doing that.
Do you have a bookkeeper and an accountant as well, or is he one
Yeah,
person?
we accounting also, because this is two very different things. So the accounting help us for the taxes, the TVA, as you can know, French is a lot of taxes and a lot of TVA to calculate, but this is good, and Eric, the CFO, he will be more focused on the fundraising to make sure the EBITDA is positive. And yes, it's more about financial, and the accounting will be more about taxes.
Yes, exactly. Well, and that's actually what we're going to talk about. I think, Pam's going to also shed a lot of light on, some of the different functions, right? Because again, you make a good point. Bookkeeper, accountant, CFO, all these things can be very confusing. But all of us here, Pam, as I mentioned, we're managing the marketing, right? We're really focusing on the marketing and looking at, as this presentation says, like, how should we be thinking about making some decisions when it comes to marketing and the financials? Because one thing that I have seen across the board, it doesn't matter if there's an accountant or CFO or someone acting in this position, there's often a lot of disconnect between what the financials are saying. And I think that it's such an important conversation for everyone here to understand, when we're making budgets, how do we work with the financial side of our business to make those decisions smarter? And oftentimes everyone's just asking the marketing side to just tell us what you need, right? And there's kind of this idea of like, well, as long as there's ROI, we can afford it. But oftentimes that's not the best way to make smart decisions. So this is really where I'm excited to get that knowledge from you today.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to dive in. I've got the chat open. So if y'all have questions, amazing. You can raise your hand. So let's just dive right in. So first off, there's lawyers in the world. So, legal disclaimer, you're welcome. But here's the plan. We're going to talk about knowing your numbers. We're going to talk about profit, and we're going to talk about cash flow and how that helps you as the marketing directors to know what to focus on and what to communicate to your accounting team, to make sure that you are getting the ROI on that dollar spend. So quick about me. I've been helping small businesses know their numbers, increase their profit, reduce their taxes, and grow their wealth for over 20 years. I myself own and run 5 companies, over 7 figures in revenue, team of 20 some people. So lots of fun things that I get to do on a daily basis, all the meetings and all of that. But let's just get right into it. When it comes to marketing, numbers matter, y'all. It's not just, well, how's my funnel look and what is the content and who's my avatar and all those things. But I'm sure all of you at some point have to interact with a numbers person that says, well, how much is it going to cost? Can we afford this? So what I want, 2 main points with this is selling more at a loss just makes you broke faster. Because over 95% of the businesses that we work with, and we manage $500 million for our clients. 95% of the people, when they come to us, they do not understand their cost to fulfill, and they are not charging enough. I was in person in Dallas with a client yesterday, and they finally realized that they were spending $1.07 to get $1 from the client. And I was like, they're a service provider. And I was like, you literally could just have someone come to the door, hand them 7 cents, and tell them to have a good day, and could save yourself the trouble. So often, a lot of times, people just think they can sell their way out of it. If the numbers, if there's a disconnect of what's in the bank, they think if I just sell more, it's going to be fine. But ultimately, selling more, if you're not pricing your products right, and if you're not tracking your numbers properly, will just make you run out of money faster. So I'm here to help you have some tactical tools to be able to have intelligent conversations with your accounting team, so that you as the marketing director, marketing lead, can make sure that you're getting the ROI and you're getting the funds that you need to do what you need to do to make the impact in the world.
Can I a
Go ahead.
question just quickly, just in the chat, if anyone wants to share. Is everyone very clear on how much it costs to fulfill, how much the product costs or how much the service costs to fulfill? Or is this someplace where you feel like it's unclear? And Pam, could you tell us, like, is this something that you believe should come from the marketing side, or is this something that the operation side should be informing the marketing to understand, right, that cost? Because we have our cost of acquisition, but oftentimes in marketing, we're looking at cost of acquisition of what's the money we put out and the money that comes back in. And oftentimes that cost of goods sold is not rolled into that at all.
Correct. And a lot of times people completely forget overhead as well.
Yes.
So that's a
Marketers
huge
don't like
piece.
putting that in at all.
No. So then as far as what to charge for your product or service, that doesn't need to stem from marketing. That needs to come from the leadership, the accounting team, and operations. And then they need to say, our widget costs $3. We need to charge a minimum of $9. Go sell more of it, right?
Absolutely.
Go find us more people to put roofs on. And so what I find is we've got hairdressers, med spas, service providers, manufacturers. They are all not including something. I had a manufacturer that had a $300,000 machine that he was not including in his prices for fulfillment. And so he was doing a bunch of marketing, newsletters, funnels, pay-per-click, all of that stuff. And I was like, every piece of widget that you build and manufacture, you're losing 21% because you're not including your equipment cost. And he's like, oh, well, I've already bought it. I was like, but you have a loan for it. And when it dies, you're going to have to replace it. Where's that money coming from? He wasn't including his equipment at all in his pricing. So all of his marketing spend was for nothing because for every dollar he brought in, it cost $1.22.
And I think this is I think for the folks that are leading the marketing, executing the marketing, this is like a very insidious little point that if you feel like you're like the target's always moving from the operations standpoint, and even if you feel like you're hitting, because this idea of what do the targets need to be, here's a huge conversation that I have with so many founders that, again, go to the marketing team to say, what should the targets be? Set our own targets. But I always, and this is not how I always worked. This is how I worked understanding CFOs and companies will help you set what those targets should be. When you say, as a founder, guys, or your CEO is telling you, how much money do you need to make in the year? There's a profit that they want to make, but there's so much cost that needs to be covered. That number is not something that you guys thinking of in the marketing head should be pulling out of your rear ends. And guess what? So many of us, and don't want to look down from the hilltop, but so many do that. And it's just out of not thinking of these things. You said the equipment piece. It's so obvious when you state it, but it's incredible how we just forget about these things, right?
Yeah. And if any of you have a large building that has 10 people sitting in it, okay, well, most likely your burn rate for that building is 20 grand a month for rent, insurance, property tax, utilities, the cell phone system, the internet, the computers, the software, all of that. And if you're not considering that in your pricing, you've got a huge disconnect. And the problem is, then you have ownership or leadership saying, hey, Mike, go sell, 10 jobs this week. And you're like, okay, well, at what price? And if they're not giving you that, you could be selling because that's what you're told to do and marketing, but then you're losing the company money and it's not your fault. So what I'm have here is things for you to go to your leadership and your accounting team and ask to make sure that you as the marketing department has the information that you need so that you can ensure that you're selling at a profit. Sarah's a typical client that we see, service provider, 7 figures in revenue. She thinks she's killing it, but then she looks in the bank and she's like, where's my money? Right? I know I'm making money. I'm selling. My clients love me. Where's my money? And this is often what we see. And we have clients who want to increase their volume, want to focus on their marketing, but they're like, where's my money? And the problem is most likely profit, cash flow, they don't know their numbers. It's that. And because they don't know their numbers, they're not charging enough. And so that's where they're selling and they're marketing to packages and services and products that they're not making money on. And that's why there's no money, which is then stressful for you guys. So this is something that as a marketing director, make sure that you understand the numbers tell a story, and you need to know what that story is. Yes, we want to know cost per acquisition, lifetime value, all of those KPIs on the marketing side, but for the greater good of the company, we need to make sure that your team is getting monthly financials, that you have KPIs that are tracking what's actually hitting the bank. I've talked to multiple, high 7-figure owners who are like, yeah, we're doing really well. These are my sales, but then I go and look in their books and I look at your P&L and I'm like, but where's the money? Oh, we have these great payment plans. And I'm like, okay, so that means you can't make payroll next week. Because you have all this money out there in the abyss on accounts receivable and payment terms and all of that. But if you of marketers are focusing on a product that the cash isn't going to come in for 6 months, but you've got to fulfill on, that becomes a nightmare for you and the nightmare for the accounting team and the ownership, because payroll comes every week or every other week. And if what you're doing on the marketing side isn't bringing cash in on a regular basis and the accounting team doesn't have that cash, we have a shortfall. So make sure that you are clear on what your budget is. And I know that's hard because you have people, oh, we want to implement this, or we want to start this, or we want to do this strategy. Okay, well, how much is it going to cost? That's great. But what you also need to make sure is that your accounting side understands the KPIs that you're going to be providing to them. So as a fractional CFO, when we work with our clients and they have a marketing consultant or a marketing team, we're always wanting KPIs to make sure, is the ROI there? Is the money working? Is the $10,000 that we're spending a month on these things, is it hitting the bank account? Because I don't want pie in the sky. Sales are great, but there's no money in the bank. And so make sure that there's not a disconnect there.
Before we move on to the next point, one thing I wanted to double click on is this idea is pricing, right? Because I think pricing is one interesting thing that I believe a lot of teams try to push on to the other one to decide. So there's we've got a lot of founder-led marketing, right, in our community. And so the founders will look to, their CFOs, if they have them, a lot of them don't, right? Or their accountants. They'll just pluck some number out of the ether, or they'll be asking for a comp analysis from like, just what is everyone else charging, right? What do you think is a smart way to, I guess, is there one person that should be making the pricing decision? Or what do you think is a smart way to think about pricing?
Sure. So it needs to, I'm going to jump ahead and slide, but it needs to start with profit.
Yeah.
So it's a profit-driven decision. It's not, you need to determine your pricing based on the amount of profit you want and reverse engineer it. So typically people think sales less expenses equals net profit, but I'm going to, again, jumping ahead, but it needs to be sales less profit equal expenses. So when it comes to pricing, my question is, how much money does the company need to make net profit, net operating income? And my answer is a minimum of 15,000 or don't get out of bed, or 15% or don't get out of bed. Like you need to be making 15% net income, net operating income, or it's not worth doing, because most of us have debt that we've got to carry, and that we've got to pay the principal portion of our debt out of that. We're going to have to pay taxes or use the money for tax strategy. So you want 15% net at least before you get out of bed. Then you need to look at what your direct costs are, your operating costs to fulfill on that product or service. Then you need to add your overhead. And that is a nice little formula that tells you what you have to charge. So I think that needs to stem from the marketing and the leadership, the accounting and leadership, because the accounting knows what the operating costs are. The accounting knows what the overhead costs are. And the leadership should be able to determine, I'm not getting out of bed for less than 20%.
Mhm.
Right? They need to know what their net profit, net operating income targets are. And then it's a straight math formula. Like put it into ChatGPT and say, hey, I want a 20% net profit margin. My overhead is 35%, and my cost of goods sold on this particular product is 35. What do I need to charge?
Mhm.
Like it will do the math for you. You can do an Excel formula. That's how you need to determine your pricing. And that doesn't need to come from marketing. Marketing needs to be told it costs, go sell this for $10, $8 is the minimum.
Yeah, exactly.
Go sell it. Tell the world this is the best pen. Everybody needs them. And I expect you to sell 10,000 of them a day. That's what marketing needs. And then marketing can say, okay, it's going to cost me X amount to do that and meet those metrics. I need the money.
Mhm.
Like marketing doesn't need to determine what to sell this for. Marketing can give feedback as to what the market says and what the marketplace will allow. You know, if no one's going to buy this pen for $20, okay, well then we need to go talk to accounting and leadership and say we can't make a 50% net profit margin on this pen. The market won't allow it. I need to sell it for less. And then it's a conversation with them. But we still need to cover our costs.
Yeah.
And too many people that we bring in as clients, we have a whole analysis process that we do. We go through this and I'm like, no offense, but you could actually make more money working for someone else. Why are you a business owner right now?
Exactly. I'm sure that happens a lot.
Yeah. And it's like, why are, you know, I appreciate your heart for starting a business and being an entrepreneur, but if you're not making money and if you're not focusing on your profit, like go get a W-2 somewhere.
Mhm.
And that's the problem, is because they're not charging enough. They don't understand their costs. I literally had another client earlier this week in the med spa space. She didn't account for her overhead in any of her pricing. So she's charging for, you know, services, and she has a beautiful brand new built out clinic, fancy chairs, a bunch of expensive equipment in it, you know, cryo chamber, red
Yeah.
light thing,
Yeah.
drip chairs, all of it. And she wasn't charging for her overhead in her pricing at all. And I'm like, okay, well, like sell your equipment and you're like, cause you're upside down.
Yeah.
So understand your pricing. And so as marketers, make sure that you have the information that you need from the accounting team and the leadership, and make sure that it makes money. Because if you're out installing roofs, manufacturing something, producing products at a loss, quite frankly, you're going to need a new job too, because the company won't have the cash. Because you want your business to have a profit. You want your business to grow, because if it is focusing on its profit, that's how it pays down debt. That's how it makes sure that you have the money for the next marketing, you know, project that you want to implement. If there's no profit, if you're not making money on the products and services that you sell, you as the marketing director aren't going to have money to go market with.
Mhm.
And so too often people just look at the top line. Well, top line is vanity, bottom line profit is sanity. And that's where you as the marketers, it's not your job to figure these numbers out, but it is your job to ensure that the team that's giving you the data is doing it properly.
And this is where I think like a lot of, I hope that what Pam is saying gives you permission to push back on any one of your stakeholders or CEOs that are trying to push this stuff on you. So there's a lot of times even where, you know, especially for like smaller offers, right? There's this idea of like marketing can just determine what all of those costs are, right? But even in those smaller offers, I'm looking at you, Michael, and I don't want to get into specifics because this is being recorded, but at the end we can talk about specifics. But let's say you have an upfront offer or a smaller offer that's not those things still have fulfillment costs, right?
Yes.
Even if we're doing an upfront offer, and this is something that's a huge oversight for the marketing team. When you have people, I'm talking to the founder-led marketers now here. When you have your execution team that's like, let's do an upfront offer that's going to be like a lead magnet. They pay a little bit for something. And oftentimes this is like a price that gets pulled out of the ether. And even if it's a digital something, it still has a cost behind it. Right. And I think this is also a point that people miss. Sometimes we think that like, we don't wrap in our software. We don't wrap in, like we just forget.
Yeah.
And all of this makes up to those solid numbers you can lean on, right? We're not just guessing.
Yeah. We worked with a client the other week that is a online educator. And so she's got virtual courses and a mastermind group and all of that. And she thought she was making bukus of money, she thought she was making like 80% profit margin on these. Well, she forgot that her affiliates get a chunk.
Yeah.
And then she forgot about her overhead. And I'm like, okay, well, you've got this software, this software, this software, your rent for your fancy office, you're writing off your car, your kids are on payroll, blah, 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 blah. Like you're actually not making as much as you think on those offers. And then the upsell, she thought like, this is the best because it's a group training program and I'm making so much money. But then when we ran the numbers and showed her what the actual fulfillment costs were, I was like, you need to increase the price or shut it down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And because she wasn't thinking of all those things, like even her lifestyle that the business was affording legally, tax write-off wise, she was not including in her price logic. So she was not making anywhere near as much money as she thought she was on her products.
Yeah.
Because you have to consider all those things because they exist. If they leave your bank account on a monthly basis, they need to be incorporated in your pricing.
Absolutely. So interesting.
So make sure that as you are being told to market and go build and all of that, make sure that the company is focusing on the profit that each one of those. So ask the accounting team, what is the gross profit margin on this product? What is the gross profit margin on this service? Because that is the sale price less the direct cost to fulfill on it. And if they can't tell you that number, we have a problem. And then the other thing to ask is, what's our overhead percentage right now? What net profit margin are we shooting for? Because unfortunately, as marketers, you do need to know a little bit of accounting because you can go sell all these beautiful things and go broke. I actually worked for a trade business for almost 15 years, and they filed bankruptcy because the sales and marketing weren't pricing things properly and they were losing money. You can't do $1 million job that cost you 1.3 because they weren't accounting for all of the direct costs. They weren't accounting for overhead and they weren't making room for profit. It's a bad way to go. So make sure that as marketing professionals that you understand that it's not about, yes, we need to sell because we all need that. But if there's not profit, if there's not money at the end of the day, we're losing this game. Because business is checkers, is chess, it's not checkers. We're not just jumping over. It's a long-term game. And as marketers, you're playing chess because it's how do I maneuver? I need to do A/B testing here. Let's change our avatar up. Let's change our messaging. You're doing all of that in real time. But if you're not being supported by the company to say, this is what our product actual fulfillment costs are, you're going to run out of money. So profit brings freedom. It makes it so that you have cash to build the next thing that you want to build. And it makes sure that you're aligned in your goals with the leadership. Because if leadership understands top line, but the leadership, the owner, the founder, your founder-led marketers, if there's no profit, sweetie, you don't get paid. Mm-hmm. Like that's your money. That's the money you need to pay down debt. That's the money that you need for taxes. And if there's no profit at the end of the day, you're losing at this game.
I don't know if you're going to talk about this later, because I know this is relevant. Like Deborah, I want you to perk up your ears. How does this fit into making those strategic investments? Because when it comes to strategic investments for a big growth targets and all these things, marketing carries the burden of those. Now, obviously, if you're a med spa and you're buying cryogenic chambers, that's a big investment. But on the marketing side, that could look like ads, that could look like revamping websites, that could be like doing big sponsorships and things like that. So from a financial perspective, how should we be communicating those or thinking about those things that maybe don't have that direct ROI within 1 year?
So if you're wanting to do a large marketing campaign, I've got a client right now that's doing a large launch on a certification and a framework, and there's a lot of capital expenditure costs to build that out that we won't see the return on for probably 12 to 15 months. And so what it came down for us is we just had to look at the cash forecast to figure out, where's this money going to come from? How can we carry the burden of the cash needed to fulfill on this until the cash came? And because of the timing, we actually had to tweak the offer a little bit because he was going to run out of money at month 13 and the return wasn't going to be until 16. And so we had to create a different tier to bring in cash sooner so that he didn't run out of money. And that's where having that forward-looking view is pivotal to the success of these things, because you can throw 20,000 here, 10,000 here, and just hope it sticks. It's like throwing spaghetti on a wall if you have the money to burn. But if you don't have the money to burn, then you need to be intentional about those decisions and have a forecast of what the future looks like financially for your business. And that's the next point, which is cash flow. Because if you don't understand the cash flow of the business, or your leadership or your accounting team doesn't understand the cash flow, you don't know when day you run out of money. And so it's really imperative that you understand that you're pricing things correctly, that you're focusing on the profit, and that the machine has cash to fuel it. People say cash is king, cash is queen, right? Like, you've got to have cash in the ecosystem of your business to do the next job, to do the next deal, to build the next product, to make the next funnel, to do the next campaign. And if you're not watching your cash, that's where you get in trouble. So at the simplest form, cash flow is the money movement within the business, the money in and out. And as marketers, you might not be privy to the bank accounts. You might not see the Amex statements, but you should have a budget that leadership is providing you. You should have some resemblance of a profit and loss or balance sheet that you can look at. And hopefully you have your own marketing KPIs that you're showing them. Because if you have your numbers dialed in and your analysis in tight, they're going to be more confident to share it with you. And so that's where I want to make the point about cash flow is you need to make sure that the team is tracking the back end and the money movement so that you can map your marketing. Because I've seen teams that there's a huge disconnect where the accounting sits in their office and puts their head down, and they're the traditional bean counters, right? And then you got the marketing who's just going crazy and building all this stuff, and there's a huge disconnect. And this one's griping because they're spending so much money, and this one's like, I hope it's working, let me know. And they're just running as fast as they can in the other direction. So I would encourage you as marketers to stop, like, work on the same team. Because if the accounting team lets you know, hey, our cost to fulfill is this, here's what our ad spend last month, here's what our sales were, nailed it, good job. Marketing team, you've got a dashboard that shows all that. Everyone's happy, but I'm sure all of you have nightmare stories of marketing and accounting going like at it because there was a disconnect. Because marketing's like, go, 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 sell, sell, sell. And accounting's like, wait, but it's not, we don't have the money and payroll. So understand how cash flow is pivotal to your success as a marketer and the accounting team. And if you work together and you start sharing your data points to them, they will be more apt to share their data points with you so that you can ensure what you're doing. I had a sales coach that I got in a little disagreement with because he was like, oh, it doesn't matter. Accounting doesn't matter. You just sell more, just sell, just go whatever. I was like, okay, well, all you're doing is making your clients broke. Because if you're not working in collaboration with the numbers, you don't know if what you're doing is working. And you don't know if what you're doing is profitable. And you don't know if what you're doing is actually crashing the company.
And this is where I have to say, like, and this maybe is could be later in your presentation as well, but where I feel like there's a very important distinction between bookkeeper and accountant and CFO, because in my experience now, like 15 years working with, founders and marketers, I have seen so few circumstances where an accountant feels comfortable being part of these conversations or being a voice in the conversations. I don't know if that's a cultural thing on the accounting side, but it's almost like there are a lot of accountants that do just want to be bean counters and they don't feel comfortable. Maybe they don't feel like they understand sales and marketing enough. And so they're not part of the conversation. But I can tell you, like, the very few amount of founders that have brought that top accountant into the leadership team conversations and had the leadership team looking at P&L. I mean, wow, like what a difference in what everyone can achieve. So I guess my first question is like, why is that so? And if anyone here that's listening feels themselves in this situation, what do you deem like the solution to be? Especially if they can't afford like a full-time CFO. Hint, hint, wink, wink. Yeah.
So let me first, I think the kind of discord between the two is animosity that's created because they have the same goal, but they're doing it differently. So a lot of accountants are just head down. I'm trying to save the company. I'm trying to save the company. And marketers are head up. I'm trying to build this thing. I'm trying to scale. And typically the owners is on the side of the marketers and the sales team and saying, go, 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 crap the whip, cracking the whip and go, go sell, give me more, give me more. And the accountant's just sitting in the corner annoyed that no one's listening to them. And so if you as the marketer can get them to rally and be on your team, you will have much better success. Like as fractional CFOs, if we're not on the call with the marketing team, we have KPIs that we get from the marketing team. We're trying to be their ally because we want the company to grow, but we've got to make sure that it makes sense. And so it's not a tug of war between accounting and marketing. It should be a collaborative steering the ship in the same direction. So let me make some definitions, clarify some definitions. So a bookkeeper is the bean counter. That is the person who sits and tracks the money in the bank account and the credit cards and the loans and codes it to a spot. Everyone needs a bookkeeper. Like it or not, outsource it, hire somebody. Everyone needs a bookkeeper. A controller is a slightly higher skilled bookkeeper who can then do some reporting for you, but they're still looking in the rearview mirror of your business. They're telling you what happened. And as marketers, that's important because you need to know that money I spent, did it work? Did it help? But the controller is still just sitting in the back seat telling you where you've been. A CFO or a fractional CFO, if you don't have the budget for a full-time one, sits in the front seat in the co-pilot and says, business owner, you want to go from Atlanta to Maine. We're going to jump on this highway. This is how we're going to go. Oh, somebody needs a potty break. It's a forward-looking view of your business. And that's what a lot of people don't understand is marketers are forward-looking. A CFO is forward-looking. And so it's a perspective change. The accountant, the bookkeeper, the controller is sitting in the back seat saying, you just passed something. Oh, 3 months ago, you did this. You shouldn't have done that. That's not helpful for forward-looking people. And as marketers and sales, we're forward-looking. So that's why the CFO should be your ally and should be your team member in this, because the CFO is saying, hey, I want to hit 10 million this year with 20% net profit. What can you do for me? I've got X amount of money. Go put it to work. Let me know weekly how it's going and I'll adjust. And then there's the tax professional who is just keeping you compliant with the IRS. They take your numbers from the bookkeeper, put them in a software and say, congratulations, you owe Uncle Sam. And then a tax strategist is very different, who's someone that works with your CFO and says, oh, we're slaying this year. Good job. We're going to actually do better than we anticipated. We need to put this money to work so that we don't have a big tax bill. So a tax strategist limits what you pay the IRS. A tax professional just takes information, put it into a software. The problem is the term accountant can be intertwined with any of those things. And so people say, oh, I have an accountant. Okay, well, what do they do? Because just an accountant doesn't mean that they're providing that forward-looking view. An accountant doesn't mean that they're helping you make money. An accountant might just be making sure you don't go to jail for tax evasion.
Yeah.
So is that helpful, that distinction?
Super helpful. Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And I think it's not easy to understand. And I think it, as all of the founders out there, I think it's really, really important to understand who it is you have on their team, because people will call themselves CFOs or people will call themselves accountants, and you may just have a bookkeeper, for example,
Yes.
right? And especially in smaller companies, right, where we're all, pitching in and wearing all the hats and trying to do all the things. But what I do find is having someone on your side, because, again, I go back to this idea of the marketing budget, right? Where there's always this question with founders when I come into projects where it's like, who should provide the budget? It's like, yes, you guys have to actually, marketing has to provide a budget of their aspirational budget of what they want. And then someone on the operations side, hopefully it's a CFO, but someone needs to provide a budget from the operational side as well, where you guys can meet in the middle.
Yes.
And I have very rarely seen that be the case. Often it is just the scenario you say. Budgeting comes from marketing, and we all just kind of cross our fingers.
Yeah.
And it's not a good place to be functioning in. And even very large corporations, it's an oversight. And that's where we have to start laying off and all these things, because it affects the cash flow, and the cash flow pays for all of it, right?
Exactly. I've had clients that did 13 million one year and killed it, did 7 million the next year and lost their tail. And everyone was just pointing their fingers at each other.
Yep. Yeah.
And it was like, oh, it's marketing's fault because sales down. Oh, it's accounting's fault because they didn't tell us that we weren't, we weren't hitting our numbers. And so if you're fighting with your accounting, you're not going to win at marketing.
Yeah.
And so you've got to figure out how to play nice in the sandbox with the accounting team. And having a forward-looking accounting person like a CFO is a game changer, because they're the one that's creating that forecast for you, that budget that says, here's our goals, here's our metrics, this is the budget that I have set aside. What can you do with it? How many ads do we need? What's your CAC that's required? Like in my business, I have a marketing strategist, I have a salesperson, and I have CFOs, and I know how much I need to spend to get a certain number of phone calls from my sales team based on their conversion rate to get to my sales goals. And I have my pricing, and I know my profitability goals. But that took time. And as marketers, I know that you guys are frustrated very often because your accounting team is not providing you what you need. And so my encouragement is play nice in the sandbox. And I've got some action items of things that you guys can do is get the P&L from your team, get the profit and loss, see where the money's going, understand the cash flow. And if they won't show you all of it, ask for basic things like what's our gross profit margin? What's our overhead percentage? What's our net income that we're looking for? Because if you have those key metrics, you can know whether you're winning or losing at this. And then create your marketing KPIs on a dashboard tracker, their software. I don't know what you recommend, Victoria, but have something, because do you know what an accountant wants? Do you know what a CFO wants? Numbers and data. And if you give them numbers and data, you will get more money.
I just want to pause on this piece, because a lot of the marketing efforts of a business, right? When we talk about creating KPIs, many times the KPIs are just like, well, what have we done? And maybe we can do a little bit more. No, the KPI, I always kind of bring it down to this idea of like a waterfall. The KPIs always stem from, what is it that the company needs to make? What are the business objectives? And that's going to fall down to, how many people needs to come to the landing page, or how many sales calls do we need to get on to reach all of those goals? And that's not typically how KPIs are made. So this is one of the huge things that I teach inside the accelerators, how we create our marketing scorecard and the KPIs that fall from those numbers. But again, be confident in knowing that it doesn't have to be these KPIs and the marketing targets and all of this stuff comes from real data that comes from how the business is operating and what it costs. That's how we make it up. It's not just, what do we want to do this year? How many leads sound like a good amount of leads? Or let's just get a little bit more leads than we did the year before, or the month before, because oftentimes year over year, things change a lot in businesses as well.
Yeah.
And those conversations, if they're not happening, you yourself have to be the advocate. And if you're the founder that's listening, that's leading the marketing, and you have an accountant or a bean counter that's not giving you this, then you know this is your signal to get some more upgraded help. And it doesn't have to be full time, right? It could be fractionally, but I have seen it time and time again. It is the thing that makes the biggest difference in businesses, is knowing, having someone that knows the numbers, that can be a forward-looking ally.
Exactly. Otherwise, you're going to build beautiful funnels and have beautiful strategies and content that you're putting out into the world. And then your bean counter is going to come and say, rah, rah, rah.
You made no money.
You didn't make any money. I'm cutting your budget, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And you're just frustrated. So it's hard. I get it. There's not an easy road for this, but I would encourage you to make friends with accounting and make sure that there's someone on the team with a forward-looking accounting view, that CFO, that tax strategist, to help you as the marketer know that you're either winning or losing at this game. Because otherwise you're going to go out into the world and build beautiful things, and someone's going to be like, okay, I'm taking your marketing budget because it's not working, and you're fired.
Yeah. And you're fired. But I mean, it might not even happen in that way. It might happen in the sense of like the CEO or you yourself as the founder are going to realize, like fudge, I have not been thinking smart about this. And now I want to reach my goals, but I have no money to do so. Right. And a lot of times when we say, if we're making a marketing strategy for the year, so much of it is like, what game are you playing? What do we need to accomplish? And if we're not clear on that, yeah, we can make goals, right? We have our vision of goals of what we want, but those things have to be tied to real things that are going to make a difference in your business. And Pam brings up such a great point about founders, right? How much you want to take home, what your lifestyle costs, what you want to get paid. That's where I know that you're certified in profit first, right? Methodology, which is everyone in business should read Profit First, but finding a Profit First accountant and financial team is so great, because it's, again, for us founders that are building a business that we're running and we need it to pay ourselves, right? That's a really meaningful number to go off of, making our forecast on what we really want to do, the business to do in a year. But we need some solid numbers and targets to figure out what the how is.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah. Okay, Pam, so we've got a couple minutes and I want to take some individual questions, but can you tell everyone where do you like to hang out online, where everyone can find you if they need to tell the founder, if they're the marketer, tell their founders to contact you, or if the founder's saying, oh my gosh, I do not have anyone on my team that's doing these things for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Just go to pamjordan.com. On social, I'm Pam Jordan CFO, or there's a QR code, and this gets you onto the calendar to meet with my team to see if we're a good fit, to learn more about what CFO is and make sure your bookkeeping is tight and make sure tax strategy. We do tax filing, but only if we do your tax strategy, because our goal is to help you make money and keep it.
Which is a noble goal. And also, just quick plug for your book, because you do have a book.
I do. Yes, It is Start with Profit.
Okay, I love it. Okay,